spooky style.
Have you ever explored the depths of fear? Have you ever wondered what depravity dwells within the imagination of a storyteller that prompts them to exhume horrors untold and expose those horrors to unsuspecting audiences? Some are repulsed, and some are shaken. However, there are those who are invigorated. So to those demented souls, we invite you to journey inward into the dark bowels of human imagination. Press play, and you will discover what's in the podcast.
And welcome back to a very special edition of What's in the Podcast. And to start this one off, life has a very interesting way of beating you down, but then all of a sudden saying, hey, here's a little something. And this is that time for me to say that all of a sudden out of the blue, I was going to my favorite convention, and then I would get a chance to meet the star of one of my favorite movies, but then to end up having this wonderful, effervescent gentleman actually say yes to being on my modest little podcast. Yeah, sometimes life is just absolutely beautiful, and today is a beautiful time because here I am with the man who is the star of the movie to which this podcast has earned its moniker, Kevin VanHentenryck. Welcome to What's in the Podcast.
Thank you.
Oh, so you know
My
what?
pleasure.
I had it all planned out, but you had it all planned out right here. But now I'm like, you realize I spent all day at work trying to figure out that intro. So I'm like, how do we do the ebb and flow from here? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, so yeah, I guess the key place to start is just, when you came to Spooky Empire, I'm not going to lie, when the announcement happened, practically everyone, like a lot of people who were like the moderators on the Facebook panel or the Facebook group and all that kept tagging me with the announcement to let me know that you were coming. So I'm not gonna lie, when I made the approach and your handler, his name was also John, right? I think.
Yes.
Yeah, when he said this is the guy, I'm like, you know about me, and I was like, so. I mean, how much did they tell you before I approached?
Just that you'd been doing me at that show for a few years at least, and
Yeah.
after they saw you a few times, they decided, well, we should get this guy over here for real. And it turned out Spooky Empire, by the way. Any of you who haven't been, you should.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
Oh yeah, it's been around for actually 21. It'll be 21 years this October, and I've never had a bad time at that con. And every year, every time I go, both times of the year, it's always a spectacular memory. And I'm very happy for the people in South Carolina that they get to experience it as well. So hopefully things go well up there for them as for them. So, but yeah, from there, just we kept running into each other, and then just. I think one of my favorite things was, hanging out poolside. But then I think my favorite was when you realized this wasn't the VIP party. To make you feel better, from people who did go to the VIP party, they said, like, yeah, the poolside was better.
It was very cool. I hope he includes that in they're going to be changing venues, and I hope the next venue has a similar kind of a vibe going on.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I'm pretty sure. I mean, they do have other venues they do for the summer. So fingers crossed, whatever they go to next is equally as well attended or equally as accommodating for what they need. But so actually, I was going to ask. I mean, do you get? Outside of the convention scene, do you get down to Florida often? I mean, I can imagine the climate is way different compared to where you are.
I'm on the mountaintop region of the Catskill Mountains of New York, and so it's a few notches cooler, and I kind of prefer that.
And drier, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a mountain and woods guy, you know.
Yeah, I could picture you in the wood, just in the woods, like looking proudly up at the glory of nature. Actually, one thing I discovered, I mean, while you have definitely been, it's no secret that you're a accomplished sculptor. I did not know until recently that you were also a landscape photographer as well.
Yeah, I've been carrying a camera around for well, almost 50 years now. Um, when I first got to Lower Manhattan in the mid 70s, Manhattan was pretty rough in those days, and
Yeah.
just having a camera to record some of that, and we got the old Times Square in the film, so you see a little bit of it, but
Hmm.
it was it.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good place to start. Actually, let's go ahead and go to the start of the life of Kevin Van Hentenryck. So go ahead and let's go ahead and start there for those who are uninitiated.
I There was a girl in high school that I liked, that I had a crush on, named Cindy,
Hmm.
and one day coming out of history class, I overheard her talking to the teacher at the door about how was the play going. So I thought, wow, this is it. I'll get in a play and then I'll be able to figure out how to talk to Cindy. So as it turned out, that was her last play. And so I never got to meet Cindy, but
Oh.
I was in a whole bunch of plays in high school and it kind of took.
Amongst those plays, do you have any roles that you played that were like so memorable that you kind of keep with you for like forever?
Well, my uncle was an actor as well. His name is Whitfield Connor. And he did a play, geez, I think it was in high school, called Death Takes a Holiday, which I also did in high school. So I
Yeah.
always kind of felt like, ooh, this is epic.
Following in the
Um,
steps.
and of course, Basket Case, because of
Yeah.
the way we filmed it
Yeah.
and the way it affects people.
So according to your website, you were in. So go ahead and tell us about Tribeca, like especially around that time period. And you said it was like from 1978 to about 1984 or 1983.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So it was 74 when I discovered that I was a sculptor. And it wasn't until 78 that I moved down there. So I had a series of weird studio setups. Like I carved in the bathroom of a studio apartment on 14th and 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Prior to Tribeca, my main work area, I'd set up a workbench underneath the elevated railroad at 11th Avenue, under what's now called the High Line. In those days, it was this abandoned, derelict neighborhood, except for the girls working 11th Avenue. But I was out of the weather, and it was a deserted neighborhood. So I didn't have to worry about bothering people. The general public had just started to discover Soho, which is the next neighborhood uptown from Tribeca.
Yeah.
So, and it sounded kind of cool to me, these industrial spaces. And so I started looking in more remote areas. Like I looked at a really cool place in Williamsburg, but Williamsburg was really rough in those days, and I just could not imagine moving in all my guitars and amps and tools and then leaving it there to go to Manhattan because I worked in Midtown, in those
Yeah.
days. So when this space in Tribeca became available, and I thought, give it a try. And I had a freight elevator
Mm.
um, that emptied into my studio because I had the rear. It was 151 Hudson Street, Hudson and Hubert, right across the street from the Holland Tunnel exit. Noisy, busy in the day. After 6 o'clock, that area was completely deserted. The only
Really?
thing, yeah, yeah, it was nothing. Puffy's was the only thing down there, which was a bar a few
Mm.
blocks south of me. Um, I used to have to ride my bicycle up to the West Village to buy groceries and do my laundry. But it was a cool time to be there. Um, that space, there was a parking lot across the street. So I had sun all day long,
Mm.
view of the World Trade Towers. Now there's a high rise where that parking lot was, and that unit is in shade all the time now. So it was
Yeah.
just the right moment. They
Yeah.
were they were renovating a lot of buildings down there, so I was able to sneak in after work hours and find lots of great blocks of stone.
Let's go ahead and get to the start of your fascination with sculpture. Apparently, it was because you saw a film from Ken Russell, who, for anyone who knows me, I love me some Ken
Oh,
Russell.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
excellent.
no, I remember when I was in high school, I was a big musical guy, and of course, I knew about Tommy, and everyone kept saying like, "Oh yeah, the stage musical's wild, but well, the movie's weird." The movie's weird. So I'm like, I have to watch this movie, and then I found out the huge ensemble cast. I didn't know Ken Russell from Adam, but then I see this movie, and I'm like, I like Ken Russell. I love me some Ken Russell, and yeah, now I think The Devils is incendiary. I think it's incredible work. And just for sheer bonkers level, I adore Lair of the White Worm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as well. But the film in question was Savage Messiah was the
Yes,
film.
yes.
So, yeah, so go ahead. Actually,
And
for fun, go ahead and give us a synopsis of that
it's a
movie.
film about a real sculptor, Henri Gautier Breshka, who lived during the time of World War One.
Mhm.
And the scene is he's promised a sculpture to a galleryist the next morning that he hasn't created yet. So they steal a gravestone from a cemetery, and overnight they turn it into a sculpture, which he
Mhm.
then throws through the gallery window, and the guy rejects it. But during the course of the film, they showed a close up of a real carver's hands working a block of marble. Now, marble is fairly soft, and once you know how to use the chisels, you can work it fairly quickly. And I was so turned on to the idea of stone as a plastic medium, I started haunting the sculpture house, which was a sculpture supply place, literally around the corner from the academy where I was going.
Uh-huh.
When I had worked up my nerve and saved what I was hoping would be enough money, I went in and tortured some poor sales girl with every question I could imagine. Walked out with a hammer and three basic chisels, found a rock in the East Village, set up that workbench under the high line,
Mhm.
and the first moment that I touched steel to stone, there was this incredible thing that happened. Epiphany, revelation, whatever you want to call it, but I knew that this was what I was meant to do. It felt like angels swirling around my head, guiding my hands. And that moment has powered me to this day.
In a way, it's like it's pure creation for all intents and purposes. You're taking a inanimate material, a just something that is just there existing, and you molded it into something that will prompt people to stop and look at it, which is something they never would have done before had you not created something out of it.
And for me, the other thing is uh, about the material. Everything has a presence. Plastic has a cheap man-made presence. Uh, Glass is a little more serious, but it's still cold and man-made.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the beach, everyone does this. They see stones that stand out to them and they pick them up. And the reason is the presence of the material. And what creates the presence of the material is how it's formed.
Mm-hmm.
All stones are formed deep in the earth under immense pressure and heat over hundreds of millions of years, like diamonds.
Yeah.
And these objects, that you make out of this material have the possibility to last thousands of years outdoors with no maintenance. I think that's pretty cool. Long
That's
after
amazing.
I'm forgotten about, these objects may still be around.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sending a little time capsule to the future.
Yeah. Well, it's like, well, what is it they say about the nature of the artist and the art? It's the idea that there is no guarantee of what happens in the hereafter. So all we really know for sure is what we leave behind. And what is art if not just us leaving a monument to everything that is the best of us?
Yep.
And based on everything I've seen, you definitely did. I mean, according to this, you
Thank you.
left a gorgeous, I've seen the photos, the gorgeous statue of Rip Van Winkle on
Thank you.
let me see, what's that? Yeah, the summit of Hunter Mountain,
Yes.
which I gotta know. I mean, when we say the summit, I mean, did you actually have to like climb that sucker, or was there like a trail to get to
It's
the
a
top?
it's a ski area, a local ski area here in the mountaintop.
Okay.
And I had David Slutsky was one of the owners, and I'd seen him around at gallery openings and stuff a bunch. And he'd seen some of my work, knew I was a stone carver. He said a few times, we should do a Rip Van Winkle at the mountain.
Hmm.
Um, because the story of Rip Van Winkle is supposed to have taken place somewhere in that area.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so, after the third or fourth time he said it, I called his bluff, and it turns out he was serious. Um, the project, we started with an 8-ton block of local bluestone, and it was carved about half down below by the lodge. And the commission was structured in such a way that um, we only carved. They had a summer music festival program,
Hmm.
oompa bands and Celtic bands and country western. So they wanted me to carve only during the festivals so that people could watch and see the progress year after year.
Yeah.
Originally supposed to take 5 years. Um, the festivals when we started in '95 were 40 some days a year. So the very next season, they started cutting back on the festivals a little bit. The economy was changing, the nature of that business was changing.
Of course.
By the time we finished in '09, the festival season was down to 10, 12 days maybe. Um, and stone carving, you don't get a whole lot done in a week and a half.
Yeah.
So it's really stretched out the process. But about halfway through, they had cranes both at the top of the mountain and down by the base lodge because they were replacing either a bull wheel or a cable or something.
Hmm.
And they had machines at both ends that could lift this. And so we went for it. And the way it was accomplished, it was kind of cool. I thought it would be a bit much bigger deal than it was. Took a
Uh-huh.
flatbed truck, put about a foot and a half of gravel in the bed, nice
Uh-huh.
soft gravel,
Yeah.
set the thing into the gravel, strap it down, and drive it up to the top. Um, Placing it was a little difficult because it's an awkward spot, and they can't reach out too far with the crane because of leverage. So
Hmm.
they have to pick it up, move it a few feet, set it down, move the crane, pick it up again. We did have to do that about 6 or 8 times to place it, but it's in a really cool spot. And it's going to look really good in 200 or 300 years.
It kind of reminds, actually saying that right there, kind of reminds me of that line in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Belloc talked about, yeah, this watch I have is worthless, but you bury it for 1,000 years, it'll be priceless. And
Yes.
I'm like, think about the fact that obviously they're not going to have the full bio of this sculpture lying nearby. Hundreds of years down the line, there are going to be people who rediscover it, and then they'll be mystified by the
Well,
story.
if you go on my website, which is kevinvanh.com, you know the story of Rip Van Winkle. We've cheated a little bit with the sculpture, and included two moments from the story into one sculpture. Both the moment when he wakes up and the moment when he realizes his predicament. Because, as you say, the support material might not be available in the
Yeah.
future. So the piece has to work independently of knowing anything about the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that came from. Exactly.
It's coming up pretty soon, but usually at the end of July, you have a big old gestalt of gathering people around to teach them your art.
It's the Hunter Stone Carving
Yeah.
Seminar. That website is freehscs.com. Stands for Hunter Stone Carving Seminar. This is
Mhm.
our 17th year doing this. Every year, once a year for 2 weeks, we set up a professional caliber temporary sculpture studio in the mountaintop. We have tents and machinery and benches,
Mhm.
and we've taught thousands of people over the years. how to carve bluestone, and most of them non-artists, people that
Really?
start off with, I can't even draw a stick figure, you know, and an hour, 2 hours later, they're carving leaves or birds or, you know, a
Mm.
stone for their dead cat or whatever, you know.
Oh.
And this year, the Hunter Stone Carving Seminar, that's free, hscs.com. This year, it's August 12th through the 24th, 10 to 5, every day except the Sunday between.
Mm.
There's no sign up. It's a first come, first serve routine, low budget. And yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, for myself, I mean, I used to dabble in, um, trying to do as a cartoonist. So to me, I think it's always, but even then, I've, tried to work with painting and, when I was in cinematography, I dabbled a little bit in claymation. I mean, there was always different art forms. I always wanted to test myself at. So everything you're saying here is just kind of makes me just realize that just seems like something that'll be so interesting to tackle. And actually, that this kind of leads me to another aspect, and this I'm pretty sure our listeners are going to be intrigued if we get segued to this. When you were working on Basket Case, and the one of the people who worked on the Belial prop was John Caglione, who, much to people's shock, who I'm pretty sure even you and Frank were shocked to see him win an Oscar down the line. But did when he was working on the Belial prop, were you ever fascinated by other forms, like especially like prosthetics or or makeup effects or anything like that? Or I mean, even all the work that Gabe Bartalos did on 2 and 3. I mean, did you ever take an interest in like that aspect?
You know, I appreciate what they do. I'm blown away by the talent that these guys have. But I'm a stone carver, you know.
Hmm.
Again,
Yeah.
half of my interest in it is a love of the material and a fascination for the fact that long after I'm forgotten, these
Yeah.
things may still be around. So yeah, I'm a
Yeah. So
classicist.
that's a fascinating point because yeah, for what you do, yeah, yours is pretty much part of the elements, it's part of the earth, it's part of something that yeah, is not basically entropy does not affect that the way it affects other, forms of art. I mean, yeah, I mean, as great as it is that Basque Case has been preserved by the Museum of Modern Art, and the fact that we have so many mediums now to keep, people seeing film. And even, of course, I'm sure, a lot of the props and everything are still, I mean, I know Belial is still with Frank. I know that. Um, Even then, I'm pretty sure he's looking, I'm pretty sure he's looking rough, just by natural decay, but the fact that he was a a foam rubber puppet. And I'm pretty sure he's all cracked and all that. And even actually, I don't know if you ever saw this. This is one of the creepiest things. In the Jim Henson shop, you know the film Labyrinth, right?
Yeah.
You remember the character Hoggle, who was kind of like the one of the focal ones. Unfortunately, I don't know where they stashed him in the workshop. They did not do much to keep him preserved.
Yeah.
And what is left of him is a nightmare because you're seeing like the robot animatronic underneath and
Oh,
decayed foam latex like all around. And it just, oh man, it's just something out of your nightmares. I mean, it's just like that thing where you're seeing like someone so beloved from your childhood, and then all of a sudden just seeing it just it
yeah.
you can make a whole horror movie around just that image. And I'm like, so that compared to what you do, I think you picked the I think you picked the right one for the sake of posterity.
Well, you know, with see, we're a really arrogant species. We think
Yes.
we're such hot shit because we have cell phones and air conditioners and shit. Stone lives in a whole different um, time frame than we humans exist. Still today, with all of our technology, with all of our industry, if you want something to last, you put it into a hard stone. And
Mm,
and that really kind of is an eye opener for this culture. You know, this
yeah.
our species is so temporary. We have no idea.
I think the reason why everyone's just having like these big old knee-jerk reactions to everything and anything is because we're always terrified that this is going to start this snowball effect, which ends up creating this world-ending phenomena that ends up taking our, the choice of whether or not we live or die out of our hands. So that's a scary thought, and I mean, especially recent events, that definitely has me.
There's a Kurt Vonnegut quote: "We may be the first species not to save ourselves because it's not profitable," or something along that. It's a paraphrase, but
Yeah,
yeah, we're a suicidal race. We're running down that dark night road with the lights off as fast as we can.
we just don't want to be the generation where it happens. I think that's what everyone's most. Yeah,
Please let it wait.
I've always said to people is like, listen, if it's looking like it's leaning in that direction, I guarantee I'm going to try to gather as many friends as possible with what little time we have, and I'm going to teach everybody Tom Lehrer's "We Will All Go Together When We Go," which to me I think is the greatest, most uplifting song about impending nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably not going to be like the movies.
Yeah.
It's going to be a slow circling the drain, slow, inevitable, unstoppable. We've already screwed the climate over. People have no idea what's right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. That's why the corporatists are so rabid now. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, we've strayed into politics.
Oh no.
My bad.
Hey, all right. Now, this is the reason why I leaned hard into horror, especially during the quarantine. Actually, I think I told you this, but really, it was the quarantine that really motivated me to lean into horror, because if there's any genre that is fearless enough to tackle this subject, and contrary to what people say, horror has tackled thematic, heavily political material going all the way back to the days of James Whale. Actually, you could even say Mary Shelley herself when she initially wrote Frankenstein, to begin with. It has always been there. It's just, and I always feel like people make such a big deal about, quote unquote, if it's woke. It's like, listen, you're only mad because it's preaching a subject that you don't want to acknowledge. It's you don't want to acknowledge, and you don't want to listen. So you're getting mad that you're being preached to. I'm watching the same thing you are, and I'm cool with it because, yeah, I agree. But guess what? They're not making the movie for me. They're making it for you, buddy. So
Science, science of our time, which in this instance would be psychiatry, refers to this process as group psychosis. And it's a real thing, and it's very
mhm.
deadly. And that's what we're witnessing now, group psychosis. That's what a cult is. It's everyone participating in group psychosis.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the person running the group is a big old petulant man child who, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that he's enabling them. Basically, they are looking at him going, this guy is brash, arrogant, and he's doing it in the biggest public forum possible. And here he is running the country. If he can do it, so can I. And unfortunately, he's made people who, for the longest time, are told that the things they do should be discouraged. Now here's a guy who's risen to the ultimate power, who is doing all the things that they want to do, but they're told not to do it. Which is, I think a lot of that, and that's why it's also, let's face it, so damn hard to sway them. And even when you listen to him talk, it's scary just how worshiping they are, how they are of him.
A good friend of mine is an astrologist, and I won't remember any of the details or the names he's talked about, but this is a time of change based on the planets.
Yeah.
And listening to him talk, it's very compelling. And change is always difficult. Our species, as much as we think we like change, is scary for us.
Yeah.
And so there's a time of adjustment.
Yeah.
What is the term that the financial community uses? A correction, a correction,
Yeah.
course. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah, there is that sense that we are approaching that time when things are going to shift. And in any time of I mean, I suppose if you want to be optimistic, I mean, there a lot of times in the entire history of the human race, before there could ever be times of great enlightenment, there has to come times of great strife. I mean, even the Renaissance came after a really dark period in human history. So one could safely say that, yeah, we're probably going to stumble once again, because as technology moves on, as people change, as people start becoming aware of different aspects of their being, they're doing it and there's no guidebook for any of this. So everyone's pretty much everyone's exploring in the dark, not trying to figure out what the right way is to do it. But the problem is we don't know what the right way is until we hit that point. But like anything in life, it's all about experimentation.
Yes, yes. And I don't want to give people the impression that I'm pessimistic at all. I believe with all my being that there are more good people than there are primitives out there.
Yeah.
And, it's just a difficult time. This is hard for everyone.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we get through it because in one aspect that will allow us to get through it is what we both do. Excuse me, art,
Yeah.
or as the academics call it, making special. Because every quality, every aspect of humanity that is extant in our species now has an evolutionary reason to be. And that's very encouraging.
As much as great as innovations like social media is, like, I mean, yeah, thanks to social media, here we are having this conversation right now as it is. There's pros and cons to every single advancement, but I think people, in their efforts to connect, unfortunately find out aspects of other people that unfortunately prompts disconnect at the same time. And that and I've seen so many times where people think they know somebody, or they think here's this friend that I used to be friends with in elementary school, and yeah, it's great, I reconnected with them. Then you look on their wall and you find out that they made Ku Klux Klan finger puppets. And
Yeah.
true story, by the way.
Any tool can be misused.
Exactly, anything. And funny enough, for all the asshole politicians, including our own dumbass governor Ron DeFuckwitz, as I call him.
That's right. You're in Florida.
I am, yes, for my sins. Yeah, probably for my sins. But he's been attacking the arts community, and actually, he even attacked our Fringe Festival, the one I told you about that was running at the same time as Spooky. And I'm like going, dude, do you realize art is everywhere? Literally every single thing around you exists because of art. Even that door right behind you, that color, the color was chosen. That's an artistic choice. Every single book that's on your shelf, some designer had to design that cover. Art is literally the building that you're in right now, whether you think it or not. Architecture is an art as well. We need art a lot. As entertaining as sports are in colleges, in the end, art is way more important because that's the expression of the soul.
Well, there's a myth that only artists can do this and that everyone else just has to live their life, but that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Everyone participates in making special, whether it's the choice of a tie, the sort of yard decorations you put out on your lawn, the way you customize your truck. That's all making special, and that all comes from this need that our species has to put our mark on the environment.
Yeah. And the most wonderful thing about art is that, sure, sometimes it may not land with everybody, but a lot of times the people who it does land with it ends up creating a cascade of attention afterwards. You can kind of see where I'm leaning to with this, because let's face it, we're here today because you made a $35,000 little oddity, and through the good graces of a drive-in movie critic, all of a sudden here we are way later. And I'm pretty sure at the time you were all making it, you weren't thinking of like what's going to happen afterwards. It seemed like you all were just making a movie to make a movie. Yeah. You were ready. You've
Frank
been,
made it. I just helped.
yeah. Hey, I say it before and I'll say it again. It takes a village to make a movie. It really does. That is the one thing I will say is amazing about film theater as an art form, is that the only way a movie, any kind of movie, television, anything, it works when you have an entire crew that is obviously on the same page with you, and usually comes out great, depending on the enthusiasm. It just seems like to me that every project I've ever worked on, the best ones I've ever worked on, is because we were all eager to make the project something amazing. And yeah, sometimes it may
The
not land with,
concept, this
yeah.
is what I used to tell my band uh, when I was putting bands together. The concept is the project, the product is more than the sum of the parts.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, that somehow that this group of varied individuals can come together and produce something that is more than all of them combined.
Yeah.
It really
and
was.
there's and there's just a wonderful sense of pride that one can feel when they look back and go, yeah, I helped do that. And just to know that you were a part of it. And that's kind of the most glorious thing of all time. And I think for a lot of us, we all strive to have that one moment that will. And this is why I've always said for myself, I don't care if I work for the rest of my life, so long as I do that one thing that people remember me for long after I'm dead and gone. I think that's the most important thing in the world to me. I mean, for myself as an artist, for yourself, I would say for anyone who ever aspired to create something that enriched the lives of everyone around them.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed that we were able to take it back to basket case at the tail end right there. I impressed myself. I think one of my favorite aspects of what I hear from my side on the stories of the production of Basket Case is obviously a lot of it, due to budgetary constraints, had to be done um, pretty much guerrilla style. But I'm imagining not everything was chronicled. I mean, was there any kind of like really weird moments that may have potentially derailed filming, or just things that are just so odd that you're just like, well, okay, that happened.
Well, the Times Square scenes
Mm,
uh, were a little dicey. The guys that ran those shops along that street did not want us filming them. They
mm.
were they were very emphatic about it. Obviously running through the streets of Lower Manhattan in February was weird.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
Originally, we were going to try to do some of the Hotel Broslin at a place that was like kitty corner from Madison Square Garden. There was
mm,
in those days it was a really sleazy area,
yeah.
and we had bums coming up and saying, if you give me $50, I won't steal your cables. So we realized that was not going to work, and we ended up building the set out of several locations. We built some in Uji's loft. We built some in a freight elevator on Franklin Street.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I always joke with people, like when I'm telling people about the movie, I always tell them like, yeah, you know how they say the money is on the screen? Yeah, there's one shot where the money is quite literally on the screen.
Literally, yeah, yeah. Joe takes it.
Oh yeah. I think for as we always hear about the stories of like the big productions, like the big Hollywood productions where everywhere there's always like so many fingers in the pie. I'm always much more fast. I think one of the other great things about horror is that there's always so many great stories about what filmmakers have to do in order to see their vision come to fruition. And it's always an uphill battle, because it's one thing to write the script, but then you have to get the funding, and then and then even after the movie's done, you got the editing, and then it's just this whole constant battle. So to me, it's just fascinating that, I mean, to me, I think this is one of the greatest stories in terms of production going all the way up to Rise to Infamy, because I remember loving hearing Frank say like, yeah, I couldn't do the script I wrote, so but you know what, I just decided no one's going to see the fucking thing anyway.
Yeah, I've heard him say that a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So, all right, here's a couple of stories. Um, the original script called for Belial running through the streets, and people would see him
Mhm.
out, and you know, a
Yeah.
horrible thing. Uh, the minute we got the effect, uh, we realized that was not even remotely possible, and
Yeah.
Frank was kind of disappointed, to say the least. So he percolated on that for a while we were shooting other scenes, and a bit of inspiration came to him. These these two consider themselves one. They're
Yeah.
telepathically connected. Have me run through the streets as an analogy of Belial running through the streets. It's a perfect. It's a
It's a great
genius,
idea.
eloquent solution to a budgetary problem, as you say.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, I think what was it they say? Like sometimes out of necessity breeds inspiration. I think I'm sure I butchered that, but like a lot of times the best ideas come out of just sheer necessity.
um,
And honestly, I think that was just better in concept anyway, because of the way the gradual reveal, where yeah, it's so disorienting seeing you hanging it, running down the street, and people were like, well, I mean, New York, I guess people wouldn't question that. But I mean, but then to
Tribeca
see you
in
on
1979.
yeah, and then on top of Terry Susan Smith, just gradually, but it was such a that was just a better way to do it, because yeah, it'd be funny to see Belial running down, but honestly, I feel like this puts the audience in such a like what the hell kind of thing. Like, where is this coming from? Why is this happening? I mean, previously we just saw Belial up in the window, whisper screaming, and it's like now all of a sudden we're here. What's going on? So it's such a better tactic to put the audience on the wrong foot. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you all were shooting the scene where obviously we find out what Belial's really doing, wasn't there a walkout with some of the crew?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The So you got to remember, we were filming in 1979 and 80, and some of the crew were really kind of grossed out by that scene.
Yeah.
So we ended up, Frank tried to deal with it a little bit, and finally just said, "You all," and it was just Frank and Edgar and me and Terry in the room. As a matter of fact, the camera's going back and forth. That's me pulling focus,
Oh,
you know.
really?
Yeah, we just threw them all out, and we did the scene without the. Um,
Okay.
because I understood. I think Terry understood. I know Frank and Edgar understood the value of that scene, but you know,
Yeah.
it's and again, it's tame by today's standards.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, just recently, me and some friends did a whole thing talking about Ty West's X trilogy, which I don't know if you've seen X, Maxine,
Yeah,
and Pearl.
no,
Well, I think. Well, first of all, I think you'd really get a kick out of X, because that movie's all about a bunch of enterprising porn filmmakers in 1979 trying to make their to make a independent porn. So it seems to me like during that landscape, of course, you're going to run across people who are not used to this new breed of filmmakers who are daring to go out there and do these crazy audacious things, which for them they're not used to seeing stuff like that. And so the idea that they're working on a production and this is what the filmmaker wants to do, I'd imagine that was a big old sucker punch for them, kind of thing. So I got to know, I mean, like, obviously you knew that this was coming, so what was your reaction when you initially read, when you first found out that this is what was happening? Like, how did you respond to that?
you mean me running through the streets?
No, just when obviously when you read the script and you saw that it was Belial doing what he was doing to Sharon,
That
like,
seemed perfectly, knowing the script, that seemed perfectly logical to me.
mhm,
Um, that didn't freak me out a bit.
yeah,
There's a story arc to Duane and Belial, and that fits perfectly into the story arc. I
yeah,
didn't really understand it. I thought it was overreaction, but you're just trying to get the scene done.
yeah,
We're there on a night or a weekend, filming part time, and there's no time for fooling around
for yourself, and obviously with everything that you do in your endeavors, just everywhere. I mean, a lot of time, and as they say, art is subjective, and a lot of times, depending on someone's own sensibilities, I mean, they'll either embrace it or reject it. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine in your endeavors all over, I would imagine you've run into some dissenters at some point or another.
Dissenters. I don't, being an outsider artist, um, not really dissenters, but just no centers. No, I'm still what you would call an outsider artist,
Yeah.
whatever the hell that's supposed to mean.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there are ways you could define it. I mean, one could definitely say someone who operates outside the fringes of the establishment, I think is a good way to use good way to describe it. I mean, actually, I can't think of any other way. I think that might be the best way.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, that's not all things considered, that's not too bad of a legacy, to have really, when people look at everything you do and see that it's so wild and so unique. And I think the reason why I've gravitated above all to Frank, to you, to everything Frank has done, is because I've seen so much, like so many other great filmmakers, and still to this day, no one does what you all did. And no one had,
Well,
yeah,
thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
I mean, only you all could have made a movie where Annie Ross does a friggin' rendition of Personality on a bus with a whole bunch of
There's a story behind that too. They were trying to
what?
figure out Annie Ross, who
Yeah.
played Granny Ruth, is a legendary jazz singer from the 50s and 60s.
Mhm.
Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. Check that out, y'all. And so they were searching for a song, and they were able to get a hold of the guy that I think he wrote the song, and he held the copyright for it or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
the performance. Yeah.
And when he found out it was Annie Ross that was going to sing it, he said,
Yeah.
"I'll give it to you for $1. I'll sell it to you for $1." He was so excited that she was going to sing his song.
I can only imagine if he'd ever saw like the context of the. I would love to hear his reaction to the actual scene. To me,
Yeah, me too.
I just thought it was joyous. To me, I felt it complimented just a go for broke attitude at that point. I mean, because I mean, some would say, yeah, spaghetti on the wall filmmaking, but to me, I'm like, the way this whole saga is going, I say it's just a wonderful progression. In my personal rule, sequels should build and just get bigger and bigger. Yeah, give us, the stuff that we love, but let's see how crazier we can take it. And this is a premise that's so wild just by its very nature that let's just take it even further. And to me, I thought that was just such a wonderful addition. And not only that, because I am a whore for musicals, but so to have a musical number in general is always going to sell me. But
You were
that was
talking earlier about the Suits being involved in film.
mhm.
There's a very interesting couple of stories about second and third film, if you're interested.
Was it Shapiro Glickenhaus, I believe?
Yeah, Jim
Yeah.
Glickenhaus. Yeah, yeah. So the way Frank originally talked to me about the second film was that it would be real freaks like the 1930s film Freaks.
Yeah.
And I thought those visuals combined with Frank's sense of humor would be really cool, really disturbing.
Hmm.
Suits freaked out about that, couldn't deal with that. Then there's another one for the third film. They have a formula. So many pages of dialogue, each with so many seconds of film, blah blah blah. They have it all worked. Bean counters, we have it worked out. So at the end of the first week of filming the third film, they come up to us. We're ahead. You got to cut a scene. So we cut a scene. I don't even remember what the scene we cut was. We go about the rest of the shoot. The last week of filming, same guy comes up to us in a panic. Oh my God, we're short. We need another scene. but you're not going to write something new, right? Frank says, "Oh no, we're not going to write anything new." And he
What?
goes home and goes back to his hotel room that night after shooting, writes a scene, calls me about it, tells me about it, so on. So the next day, or whenever we shot that scene, get the pages that morning.
Mm.
I spend the big chunk of the day walking back and forth in the parking lot trying to learn the lines. Excuse me, while they're lighting and laying tracks,
Yeah, during doing setups and all that fun.
all the tech stuff. And that ended up being the scene where I run down the hill after the massacre at the sheriff's office, talking about a shoe store, and I discovered that Belial's been shot. That's the new scene that we added. So yeah, again, you never know. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, that's the term. There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was driving me crazy. I was like, it's a great expression. It's a great expression that permeates through anyone who ever had to like learn to adjust to any circumstances. I mean, so in the grand scheme of things, in compared to sculpting versus filmmaking, would you definitely say you prefer the process when you have complete control over it, or do you find the process when it's like a big old group of people? Like, do you find that aspect more entertaining?
Yeah, yeah. So I had already given up acting in favor of sculpture
Mm-hmm.
when Frank called me with the idea for Basket Case, and
Yeah.
obviously it was too good a part to pass up. I love acting. I love acting. I would like to do more acting, but I think people only think of me as Duane. But my real passion, my real love, is stone carving.
Yeah.
Um, so the thing about yeah, you're right because stone carving is a solitary for me, anyways.
Yeah.
I enjoy solitude, and it allows me to focus for long periods of time on nothing but where the end of that chisel is. But there's also something very cool about a large, varied group of people coming together. And it's like when a band hits that groove,
Yeah.
suddenly it's magic. And everybody says, "Oh, yeah." That's hard to get past as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I suppose the big takeaway from everything that we're discussing is that art, no matter what shape or form it takes, it can be very rewarding so long as you're tenacious about it, so long as you have the heart to see it through to its completion. And then you look at the finished product and you go, I did that.
The thing about accomplishment, no matter what field it is, and all arts share basic tenets. But the thing about accomplishment is it's like climbing a ladder or climbing a mountain. You think there's this insurmountable thing, and then you take one more step and then you see, oh, I can do this. And
Yeah.
then the next step shows you the next step. And so it's a process of enlightenment at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many times, and I know this is common for like a lot of artists, like actors, writers, just anybody, where they will have those moments of despair where they feel like they have not accomplished anything and they feel like they've done nothing. A lot of times, the thing that just reinvigorates them is they have to think about where they've been to realize, wait a minute, I'm better along than I'm even better. There are so many times where I despair that here I am, early 40s, still stuck in Florida, and still trying to trot out that screenplay and everything. And I'm like, God, where the hell have I done? What have I done? But then I remember, oh, wait a minute. At 6 o'clock, I'm doing a podcast with Kevin VanHentenryck. Oh, wait a minute. And then as a cascading effect, I think back to everything else I've done. I'm like, wait a minute, no. I've actually I've actually done a heck of a lot. Sure, it's not, widely acknowledged, but for myself, I can think about everything I've done and everything I've experienced. And all of that happened because this was the life I chose, and this is and because of my endeavors as an artist, as a actor, as a writer, and just as a heck, and obviously because of our meeting as a cosplayer, that's what ended up making this happen, and that's, I think, the beautiful thing about art.
Trying to be an artist in this culture, even trying to be a human in this culture, is it just in itself a monumental challenge. So don't be so hard on yourself. You're bucking the entire system, the system that is designed specifically and only to protect the interests and the money of the rich. This is not a culture that's going to support arts. You know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, ultimately the people who do support it are the people you're making it for anyway.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is just keep on at it, and inevitably the people who count.
Again, the whole analogy of climbing a mountain or walking through the woods, you never know how things will play out. You cannot see what's around the next curve or over that next hill. And the only way you will ever see that is to take that next step. So you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Wise words to live by, and I will endeavor to do so because you have beckoned me to do so. And I think anyone who is within the reaches of our voice hopefully will heed the same advice. So this, I think,
thank you all for watching, by the way.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us on this. And honestly, Kevin, thank you so much again for coming on to this show, and just thank you just for everything in general. So everyone, make sure to seek out your website, and also the link to your 2-week seminar, so that way anyone in the area,
if you want to learn how to the ancient art of stone carving, now's your chance, Jack. The Hunter Stone Carving Seminar, free, hscs.com. Be there for 2 weeks. It's completely free. We supply everything except personal safety gear. Check it out, man.
All right. And for everyone else, once again, leave feedback. That's the good stuff that gets the show thriving. Naturally, for all of you who only saw Basket Case, watch Basket Case 2 and 3. They're freaking brilliant. Watch it. Actually, just watch things. That's experience things. Even if you don't know what it is, just go. I was just talking
to somebody about Village of the Damned. You know that one from 58?
Oh yeah.
Oh man. There's so much great, cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
Seventh Seal. Anyone who doesn't know Ingmar Bergman's work?
Yeah. Seventh Seal. The movie that gave us Max von Sydow.
There's cool stuff out there.
Yeah. Actually, as a fun little thing to do at the tail end here, like what are some of your most influential I would say obviously Ken Russell, but what other filmmakers would you recommend people to seek out?
Yeah, that's interesting. My favorite genre has always been science fiction, so Frankenstein, obviously.
Of course.
But I came of age in the late 60s and 70s, so the films that were going on then are what I gravitate towards,
Yeah, that was like the dawn of, at the late 60s, that's when Romero came into prominence. That's when with Night of the Living Dead. And actually
Soylent Green. The first time I saw Soylent Green.
Oh yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I think the scariest thing about Soylent Green is that it's not so much that it's made from people, it's the fact that he's screaming that it's made of people and no one seems to care.
Yeah.
That's the scariest part. That's the scariest part to me.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Some of my favorite ones were The Day the Earth Stood Still, and
I love that one.
The original The Thing.
I still need to watch The Thing. Obviously, for my generation, when we think The Thing, we think of Carpenter's, which he did his own thing.
Watch the original.
Yeah.
Watch the skies.
Yeah.
Watch the skies.
Oh no, I really want to. And that's another thing. Actually, I can't believe. Yeah, we're kind of going on, but to me, for as great as remakes, as sometimes remakes like The Thing are, it's fun to go back and really watch like the way movies were made, like the way certain movies were made back then. It was a completely different discipline just because equipment was what it was at that time. And really during that time, filmmakers didn't have, they themselves, a lot of times, in order to do what they want, had to innovate in their own right. I mean, of course, legendarily, Orson Welles had to drill a hole in the set floor in order to get the shot he wanted for Citizen Kane. So it is fascinating to think about actually, you're right about The Thing. There's this one sequence which I've seen in clips where they're setting it on fire and they're just launching like flammable liquid, and that guy's still walking, and I'm like going, I remember what happened to Kane Hodder when a fire stunt went wrong, and I'm like, this looks like it's on set. How did that set not go up in a blaze? That's crazy. That's so nuts. So yeah, that's a good one to go out on. But anyway, thank you so much. We could honestly,
thank you. This has been very cool. I appreciate it.
Good. No, that's what's most important to me, is that if you had a good time. That's, I have a good time doing this all the time, but to know that you came and you had a grand time anyway, and hopefully our paths will cross, much sooner rather than later. And for everyone else, if you are in any vicinity of when Kevin is at a con, take the opportunity. Pure joy, just pure joy embodied, winning smile, winning everything. And for our final sign off, if you are interested in delving deep into the dark bowels of human imagination, ask yourself the very simple question.
Thank you for joining us in this edition of What's in the Podcast. If you find yourself hungry for more deep cuts into the gloriously morbid and macabre, you can also find us on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Narcotic Casserole. You can also follow us on Instagram at Narcotic Casserole 25. Also on Twitter. Yes, Twitter. Elon can suck it. At Narcotic Casser 1. NARCOTICCASSER 1. Follow us if you dare.